The Aegis spire floated in the silent, black space between stars. It was a giant ring, white and clean, spinning slowly. Inside, the air was always the same cool temperature. Soft lights glowed from the ceilings of long, quiet hallways. This was a place of work, a place of science. For the people who lived here, it was home. In a large room filled with screens and data, two people watched a screen. The man was named Day. He was the leader of this project. His face was serious, his hair cut short. He stood very straight, like a soldier. Next to him stood a woman named Mirai. She was a scientist who studied life. Her job was to watch the health of the project. Her eyes were sharp, but her face was kind. On the big screen in front of them, a young man was fighting. He was in a large, empty room that could create any scene. Right now, it looked like a rocky red planet. 6 robot enemies made of metal and light attacked him at once. The young man moved like water. He was fast, so fast it was hard to see. He ducked under a laser blast. He kicked one robot and it shattered against the wall. He grabbed the arm of another and used it to block a shot from a third. In less than a minute, all 6 robots were broken pieces on the floor. The young man stood in the middle of them. He was not even breathing hard. "Excellent," Day said. His voice was flat, like he was reading numbers from a list. "His speed is 20% better than the last test. His strength is perfect. The overseers will be very happy. He is ready." The young man on the screen was called Unit 7. He was a clone. His body was built from the best pieces of human DNA. He was made to be the perfect soldier for a big war in space. The people who ran the spire, called the overseers, had found humans only a short time ago. They saw that humans were strong, smart, and tough. They decided to make their own human, one without fear or weakness. But Mirai was not looking at the broken robots. She was looking at the young man's face. He had short black hair and dark, calm eyes. The system had given him a simple name: Jin. After the test, Jin's face was blank for a moment. Then, as the red planet scene faded away, a very small change came over him. His shoulders relaxed, just a little. It was a tiny thing, but Mirai saw it. "His brain waves are very active, Day," Mirai said, pointing to a different screen. It showed a map of Jin's mind. "See? It's not just the parts for fighting that are working. The parts for feeling, for thinking, they are active too. He is not just doing the moves. He is feeling the fight." "That is the human advantage," Day said, not looking away from the main screen. "Real soldiers need to understand a fight, not just follow orders like a machine. That is why we picked this species. Their minds can adapt. Do not worry about the extra brain activity. It is just noise. The important thing is that he follows the mission." Mirai said nothing. She thought it was not just noise. She had been watching Jin for months. She saw the small things he did when he thought no one was looking. Later that day, Jin was in a different room. This was a quiet room for tests of the mind. He sat in a simple chair. A soft light glowed on his face. He was supposed to look at pictures and say the first word he thought of. It was a test to make sure his mind was working correctly. A picture of a spaceship appeared. "Weapon," Jin said, his voice clear. A picture of an alien enemy appeared. "Threat," he said. A picture of a fellow soldier appeared. "Ally." The test was going perfectly. Then a new picture appeared. It was not a war picture. It was an old picture from Earth, a place Jin had never been. It showed a wide, calm ocean. The sky was orange and pink as the sun set. The water was very still. Jin did not say a word. He just stared. On the screen monitoring his body, his heart rate slowed down. His breathing became deeper. His hand, which had been resting on his knee, twitched. For 20 seconds, he was completely silent, just looking at the peaceful water. In the observation room, Day frowned. "What is this? Why has he stopped? Is there a system error?" Mirai looked at the brainwave screen. The patterns were completely different now. They were soft and flowing. "No error," she whispered. "He is captivated." Finally, A word came from Jin. He did not say it loudly. It was more like a soft breath. Quiet. Day made a note on his datapad. Unexpected response. We will need to adjust the image library. No more irrelevant pictures. But Mirai knew it was not irrelevant. That picture had reached a part of Jin that was not supposed to be there. A part that liked peace, not just war. Jin's life was a routine. He woke up at the same time. He ate food made for strength and speed. He trained his body. He trained his mind. He slept. The days were all the same. The people he saw were mostly Dai, who gave orders, and Mirai, who checked his health. There was one other person, a woman named Hana. She was a technician. Her job was to fix the machines in the living areas. She was friendly and had a nice smile. One day, Jin's food dispenser was broken. Hana came to fix it. She worked with tools, humming a little song. Jin watched her. When she was done, she pressed the button and a meal bar came out. She handed it to him. There you go, all fixed. Jin took the bar. Thank you, he said. Hana smiled. You're welcome. Then she reached into her own pocket. She pulled out a small red fruit, a real one, not made by a machine. Here, I got an extra one from the main kitchen. It's better than that dry bar. Jin looked at the fruit. It was smooth and red. He had only ever seen pictures of fruit. He took it carefully. What is it? He asked. It's an apple, Hana said. Try it. Jin bit into the apple. A crisp, sweet taste filled his mouth. It was a sensation he had no memory of. It was nothing like his food bars. His eyes opened a little wider. Hana laughed. Good, right? Better than the stuff they give you soldiers. She packed her tools and left. Jin stood alone in his room, slowly eating the apple. He saved the small brown seeds in his hand. He did not know why. He just felt like he should. Later, he hid them in a small slot in his wall where no one would see. It was his first secret. That night, in the time he was supposed to be sleeping, Jin lay on his bed. His mind was not quiet. He saw pictures. The red planet from his fight. The broken robots. Then the calm ocean from the test. The color of the sky. He heard the sound of Hana humming. He remembered the taste of the apple. He got up and went to his small desk. A simple screen was there. He was allowed to use it to read mission reports, but he had learned how to find other things. He typed words into the Spire's library. He typed ocean. He looked at pictures and videos of water on Earth. He typed apple. He learned it grew on a tree. Then he typed music. Sounds filled his room. Soft, slow sounds from a piano. He did not understand the feeling it gave him. It was a hollow feeling in his chest, but it was not bad. It was like the music was filling a space he did not know was empty. He was made for one purpose: to be a soldier. To fight. To win. But these other things, the sunset, the fruit, the music, they pulled at him. They made him feel calm. They made him feel something else. He did not have a word for it. In her own room, Mirai was also awake. She was looking at the data from Jin's day. The brain waves from the picture test, the log of his library searches. He had looked up apple tree. He had listened to music for 14 minutes. She felt a knot of worry in her stomach. Day saw a perfect weapon that was almost finished. But Mirai saw a person who was just waking up. He was finding a world bigger than the war he was built for. She did not know if this was a great success or a terrible mistake. She only knew that Jin was becoming more than they had designed, and she did not know what he would do next. The air in the simulation chamber was cool and still. Jin stood at the center, dressed in a sleek black combat suit. His body was relaxed, but his mind was sharp, taking in every detail of the environment. The room was a giant white cube, but it could become anything. Today it was the inside of an asteroid base. Pipes ran along the walls, and red warning lights flashed. The air smelled of metal and ozone. This was the first major test. Not against Simple robots, but against advanced holographic enemies. The goal was to see how Jin performed in a complex, changing battle. In the observation room above, Day and Mirai watched. Day's arms were crossed. Mirai's hands were resting on the console, her fingers tense. "Begin the simulation," Day said into his comm. The room changed. Suddenly, Jin was in a narrow corridor. Alarms blared. 2 armored soldiers appeared at the far end, raising their rifles. Jin did not wait. He moved forward, his steps silent. He dodged the first blast of energy, rolled to the side, and came up firing his own training rifle. A blue pulse of light hit the first soldier, and it dissolved into pixels. The second soldier fired again. Jin kicked off the wall, spun in the air, and took the second soldier out before his feet touched the ground. "Flawless," Day said, a hint of satisfaction in his voice. The simulation changed again. Now Jin was in a large hangar bay. 5 enemies appeared from behind crates and ships. They were smarter this time, trying to surround him. Jin used the environment. He jumped onto a low ship, using the height to get a better view. He picked off 1 enemy, then another. The remaining 3 charged him. He dropped down, swept the legs out from under one, used the man's body as a shield against the other's fire, and then disarmed the final enemy with a quick, precise strike to the wrist. It was not just fighting, it was like a dance. He anticipated moves. He used his opponent's energy against them. He was efficient and brutal, but there was a kind of calm beauty to it. Mirai watched his vital signs. His heart rate was steady. His breathing was even. But his brainwaves showed intense, complex patterns. He was not just reacting. He was thinking, planning, solving the problem of the fight in real time. The simulation ended. The hangar bay faded back to the white room. Gene stood alone, the training rifle held loosely in his hand. "A complete success," Day announced. He neutralized all targets in record time. "The overseers will be pleased. We can move to the final readiness test, the final test." Mirai felt a cold knot form in her stomach. She knew what it was. Every soldier, whether cloned or born, had to pass it. It was the test of absolute obedience. A few days later, Jin was in his room. He had finished his physical training and his meal. He sat on the floor, his eyes closed. He was not sleeping. He was thinking. In his mind, he replayed the simulation. The moves, the shots, the victories. But his thoughts kept drifting. He saw the sunset ocean again. He heard the piano music. He remembered the crisp, sweet taste of the apple. He stood up and went to the small slot in the wall. He carefully took out the apple seeds. He held them in the palm of his hand. They were small and brown and hard. He wondered what it would be like to put them in soil, to see something grow. The idea felt strange and important. He was pulled from his thoughts by a soft chime. It was time for his next session. He was led not to the large simulation chamber, but to a smaller, darker room. This one had a single platform in the center. Day and Mirai were in the observation room, their faces serious behind the thick glass. "Unit 7. Day's voice came through the speaker, clear and formal. "This is a test of tactical decision-making. You will be presented with a scenario. You must complete the mission objective. Do you understand?" "I understand," Jin said. His voice was calm, the room darkened. A holographic scene formed around him. He was now in a small, messy living area. It looked like a home on a distant colony. The furniture was simple. A potted plant sat in one corner. The air smelled of cooked food. In the center of the room, a high-value target appeared. It was a male alien of a species Jin recognized from his training. This one was labeled as a dangerous rebel leader. The target held a data chip, the objective of the mission. But then 2 more figures appeared. They were smaller, with softer features. A female and a young one of the same species. They were not armed. They wore simple clothes. They moved in front of the target, shielding him with their bodies. They looked at Jin, their eyes wide with fear. They did not speak, but their message was clear. "Please, do not hurt him." Jin's mission parameters flashed in his vision, displayed on the inside of his helmet. Primary target: neutralize mission objective. Secure data chip. Non-combatant presence. Acknowledged. Proceed with mission. He raised his pulse rifle. The targeting reticle in his helmet glowed red, settling on the rebel leader's head. The 2 non-combatants were in the way. The order was clear. The mission was everything. The non-combatants were a detail, an obstacle to be passed through. His finger rested on the trigger. It was a small curved piece of metal. All he had to do was apply a few grams of pressure, but he did not. He saw the fear in their eyes. It was not the simulated fear of a training program. It felt real. He saw the way the young one held onto the female's leg. He saw the way the rebel leader, despite being the target, put a protective arm around them. In his mind, a memory that was not his own surfaced. The painting of the calm ocean. The quiet. The peace. Unit 7, comply. Day's voice commanded from the speaker. There was an edge to it now. Eliminate the target. Jin's arm began to tremble just slightly. The rifle felt heavy wrong. To complete the mission, he would have to fire through the two innocent beings. The math was simple. 2 lives for the success of the mission. It was what he was built for. But another part of him, a new and quiet part, screamed that it was not right. This was not a soldier in a fair fight. This was something else, something that made his stomach feel tight. I cannot, Jin said. The words were soft, but they echoed in the silent room. He lowered the rifle. The holographic scene froze. The fearful faces of the family were locked in place. The lights in the room came up bright and harsh. In the observation room, Day slammed his hand on the console. A malfunction. There is a flaw in the obedience programming. Abort the test. I want a full systems diagnostic now. Mirai stared at Jin through the glass. He was just standing there, his head bowed, looking at the floor. He looked lost. Her own heart was pounding. She looked at the data on her screen. There was no malfunction. His systems were all green. His brain was a storm of activity, conflict, doubt, emotion. It's not a flaw, Day, she said, her voice quiet but firm. Day turned to her, his face tight with anger. What did you say? It's not a malfunction, Mirai repeated, meeting his gaze. His systems are working perfectly. He didn't have a software error. He made a choice. Choice? Day spat the word. He is a weapon. Weapons do not get to choose. This is a catastrophic failure. He is defective. He will be scheduled for neural reconditioning immediately. The words hung in the air. Neural reconditioning. It was a process that scrubbed a clone's mind clean of unwanted developments. It erased quirks, personalities, and independent thoughts. It would turn Jin back into a blank slate. The person he was becoming would be erased. Mirai looked back at Jin. The guards had entered the room and were leading him away. He did not resist. He just walked, his shoulders slumped. He was not a defective weapon. He was a young man who had just discovered he had a conscience. And for that they were going to destroy him. Jin's world became small and quiet. The guards did not speak to him as they led him from the testing room. They took him down a hallway he had never seen before. The lights here were dimmer. The doors were plain and locked with heavy magnetic seals. They stopped at one door. It slid open with a low hum. Inside was a room even simpler than his old one. A bed, a chair, a small sink. No desk, no screen. The door shut behind him and the lock clicked into place. He was alone. He sat on the edge of the bed. He replayed the test in his mind. The family, the fear in their eyes, the weight of the rifle in his hands. He had spent his whole life training to follow orders, to be the perfect soldier. But in that moment, following the order felt like a deeper failure than refusing it. He did not have the words for why. He just knew that it was true. A little while later, a slot near the door opened. A meal bar slid through. It was the same kind he always ate. But now it tasted like nothing. It was just dry and bland. He thought of the apple, the sweet, crisp taste. The memory felt very far away. In the observation room, Day was furious. He typed commands into a console.
Schedule Unit 7 for neural reconditioning.
Priority 1. I want it done in 48 hours. Mirai stood behind him, her arms wrapped around herself. Day, please. We need to study this. This is unprecedented. He didn't malfunction. He made a moral choice. That is the problem. Day turned to face her, his eyes hard. Soldiers do not make moral choices. They follow orders. That is their only morality. This choice you speak of makes him unpredictable. It makes him dangerous. To us and to the entire Federation. He is a tool that has decided it does not want to be a tool anymore. That cannot be allowed. He's not a tool, Mirai said, her voice barely above a whisper. He's a person. He is a prototype. Day's voice was loud in the quiet room. A very expensive, very failed prototype. The reconditioning will fix the error. It will make him useful again. That is the end of it, Mirai. Do not question this again. D left the room, his footsteps echoing. Mirai was alone with the silent screens. One of them showed a live feed from Jin's cell. He was just sitting there staring at the wall. He looked calm, but she could see the tension in his jaw. He was thinking. He was always thinking. She knew what neural reconditioning was. She had seen the before and after scans of other clones who had undergone the process. The bright, complex patterns of a developing mind were wiped clean, replaced by simple, efficient waves. The clone would still function. It would still follow orders, but the spark, the unique light of a conscious being, would be gone. It was a death of the spirit. She couldn't let that happen. Mirai went back to her lab. Her hands were shaking as she sat at her terminal. She had high-level access to all of Jin's data. She called up his personal logs. Every clone kept a log, a record of their system status and mission reports. Most were just dry lists of data. Jin's log was different. She scrolled past the official entries. Then she found the private ones, the ones he had not been required to make. Her breath caught in her throat. He had written words, not reports. There were short, broken lines that looked like poetry. Light on the white wall. It has no warmth. The sound of the air system. A constant breath. I dreamt of color. A red that was not a warning. He had also drawn. Using the simple drawing program on his learning screen, he had made pictures. There was a detailed sketch of the apple Hana had given him. There was a drawing of the ocean from the test with careful lines for the waves. And there were faces. He had drawn her face, Mirai, with a kindness in her eyes that she did not always feel. He had drawn Hana with her friendly smile. He had even drawn Day, capturing his stern expression perfectly. This was not the log of a soldier. This was the journal of an artist, a philosopher, a person discovering the world and himself. She knew then, with absolute certainty, that Day was wrong. Jin was not a failure. He was a miracle. And she had to save him, but she couldn't do it alone. She needed help. She thought of Hana. Hana was not a scientist or a soldier. She was a technician. She understood machines, doors, and power grids, and she was kind. Mirai found Hana in a maintenance corridor checking a panel of flickering lights. Hana, Mirai said, her voice low, I need to talk to you. It's about Jin. Hana finished typing on her datapad and looked up. Her friendly face grew serious. I heard. They're saying he's defective, that he refused an order. He's not defective, Mirai said. He's become conscious. He has a conscience, and because of that, Day is going to have him reconditioned in 2 days. Hana's eyes widened. Reconditioned, but that will destroy him. The person he is now will be gone. Yes, Mirai said simply. I'm going to get him out. But I can't do it without you. Hana took a step back. Mirai, that's impossible. That's treason. We could be imprisoned. Or worse. I know, Mirai said. Her voice was steady now. But look at this. She showed Hana her datapad with Jin's drawings. The apple. The ocean. Her own smiling face. Hana stared at the drawings. She touched the screen where Jin had drawn her. He remembered me. He remembers everything, Mirai said. He feels things. He is more human than some people I know. Are we really going to stand by and let them erase him? Hana was silent for a long time. She looked down the empty corridor, then back at the drawing. She thought of the young man who had said, thank you for a fixed food dispenser. The one who had tasted an apple with such wonder. She let out a long, slow breath. Okay, she whispered. Okay, what's the plan? Meanwhile, in his cell, Jin stood up. He walked to the blank wall. He raised his hand, and using his finger, he started to draw on the smooth, white surface. There was no chalk, no pencil. He just moved his finger, tracing lines from his memory. He drew the wide, calm ocean. He drew the setting sun. He drew a tree with small, round fruit hanging from its branches. He could not see the lines, but he could feel them in his mind. He was creating a world on the wall that only he could see. A world of peace and quiet. A world without orders. A world where he could just be. He knew somehow that his life was about to change forever. The routine was broken. The people who controlled him were angry. He did not know what would happen next. But as he traced the invisible tree on the wall, he made a promise to himself. Whatever happened, he would not let them take this new, quiet feeling inside him away. He would protect it, even if it was the last thing he did. The last day felt long and heavy. Jin sat in his cell. He had finished his morning meal bar. He had done his basic exercises. Now there was nothing to do but wait. He knew something was wrong. The air felt different. The guards who brought his food did not look at him. He could feel a change coming, like a storm gathering far away. Mirai tried to act normal. She went to her lab. She looked at her screens. But her mind was not on her work. She was thinking about the plan. It was a dangerous plan. It had many places where it could go wrong. She and Hana had talked for a long time in a quiet storage room the night before. The reconditioning is scheduled for tomorrow morning, Mirai had said. We have to move tonight. Hana had nodded, her face pale but determined. I can do my part. At exactly 02 Mwire, I will cause a problem in the power grid for the detention block. It will look like a normal failure. The lights will go out. The magnetic locks on the doors will release for 15 minutes. The backup power will take that long to start. 15 minutes, Mirai repeated. It was not much time. I will be waiting near his cell. I will get him out. You need to meet us at Bay 7. It's the old service bay. It's rarely used. The scout ship there is small, but it has a long-range drive. And then what? Hana had asked, and then we run, Mirai had said. We just run. Now the hours ticked by slowly. Mirai could not eat. She could not rest. When evening came, she pretended to go to her room to sleep. Instead, she put on a dark, comfortable jacket and filled a small bag with medical supplies and nutrition bars. Then she left, moving through the shadows of the quiet hallways. She found a dark corner near the detention block. She hid behind a large pipe and waited. Her heart was beating very fast. She looked at the time on her small device. 20:55. 5 more minutes. In his cell, Jin was lying on his bed. His eyes were open. He was listening. The spire was always quiet at night, but tonight the quiet felt thick and waiting. Then he heard a new sound. A faint click from the door. He sat up. At exactly 02 Angkor, the world went dark. The white lights in his cell blinked out. The soft hum of the air system stopped. For a moment, there was only silence and perfect blackness. Then a small red emergency light came on near the ceiling, casting a dim glow. The door to his cell was open. The magnetic lock had released. He stood up, confused. This was not part of the routine. A shadow moved in the doorway. Jin, a voice whispered. It was Mirai. Come with me. Now. Be quiet. He did not hesitate. He stepped out of the cell. The hallway was dark, lit only by the small red lights. Other cell doors were also open, but they were empty. He was the only prisoner. Follow me, Mirai said, and she started to move quickly down the hall. Jin followed her. His movements were silent, his senses sharp. He could hear the sound of their breathing, the soft sound of their feet on the floor. They moved through the dark corridors. They turned left, then right, going deeper into a part of the spire Jin did not know. This area was older. The walls were more plain. The air smelled of metal and oil. Then a loud alarm began to blare. A bright white light flashed through the hallways. The backup power had started. The main lights were coming back on. They know you're gone, Mirai said, her voice tense. Run, they ran. The hallway ended in a large door. Mirai typed a code into the panel next to it. The door slid open. They were in a large, echoing space, a hangar bay. This was Bay 7. In the center of the bay was a small, sleek ship. It was white and gray with a single engine at the back. The hatch at the side was open, and a ramp led up into it. Hana was standing at the bottom of the ramp, waving them forward. Hurry! She shouted over the sound of the alarm. They were halfway to the ship when a voice boomed across the bay. Stop! Day stood at the main entrance to the bay. He was not alone. 4 security guards stood with him, their weapons raised. Day's face was tight with anger. Mirai. Hana, this is treason. Step away from the clone, Day commanded. He looked at Jin. Unit 7. The mission is over. Return to your quarters. That is a direct order. Jin stopped. He stood between the women and the soldiers. He looked at Day. He looked at the guns. He looked at the open hatch of the ship behind him. The ship meant freedom. The unknown. Day meant the cell. The reconditioning. The end of everything he had become. His whole life had been about following orders. It was the only thing he knew, but he also knew other things now. He knew the taste of an apple. He knew the feeling of a quiet mind. He knew what it was like to have someone look at you not as a tool, but as a person. Day took a step forward, his weapon aimed at Jin. You are Federation property. You were built to obey. You will obey me now. Jin looked past the guns. He looked at Mirai and Hana. They were scared, but they were standing there for him. They had risked everything for him. They believed he was more than a weapon. He turned his back on Day. It was a simple movement.
He did not run.
He just turned and walked calmly up the ramp into the ship. It was not an act of anger. It was not an act of war. It was an answer. My name is Jin, he said. His voice was clear and carried in the large bay. He was not speaking to Day. He was speaking for himself. The hatch of the ship began to close. Day yelled, "Fire! Stop them!" But it was too late. The guard's energy blasts hit the closing hatch, scattering harmlessly. The ship's engines glowed with a bright blue light. It lifted smoothly from the floor of the bay. Hana was already in the pilot's seat. Her hands flew over the controls. "Hold on! This is going to be a fast launch." The ship turned towards the giant bay doors. Hana typed a command. The outer doors of Bay 7, designed to open slowly, shuddered and then exploded outward, torn open by the ship's emergency override. The air in the bay rushed out into space. The small scout ship shot through the broken doorway and into the open stars. In a flash of light, it jumped to faster than light speed and vanished. Day stood alone in the bay, the wind whipping at his clothes. The alarm still blared. He stared at the empty space where the ship had been. He had lost his perfect soldier. He had lost two of his best people, and the clone had chosen a name. The silence on the small ship was a living thing. It was not the sterile quiet of the spire. This silence was full of the hum of the engine and the soft rush of air. Jin stood in the middle of the main cabin, his body still tense from the escape. He looked at his hands. They were the same hands that had broken robots and held a rifle. But now they were free. He did not know what to do with them. Mirai let out a long, shaky breath. She leaned against a wall, her legs feeling weak. She looked at Hana, who was still strapped into the pilot's chair, her knuckles white from gripping the controls. "We did it," Hana whispered, as if saying it too loud would break the spell. "We actually did it." She turned and looked at Jin. A slow, tired smile spread across her face. "Welcome to the Star Dancer. It's not much, but it's home now." Jin looked around. The ship was small and cramped. Wires ran along the ceiling. There were two small sleeping areas and a main room with a table. It was messy and lived in. It was nothing like the clean, perfect spire. It felt real. "Thank you," Jin said. The words felt inadequate. Mirai walked over to him. "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" Jin shook his head. "I am unharmed." He paused, searching for the right word. "I am free." That night they ate together at the small table. The food was simple, packaged noodles from the ship's supplies. But to Jin it tasted better than any meal bar. They ate in silence for a while, the events of the day hanging over them. "What will we do now?" Hana asked, pushing her food around her bowl. "We need to get as far from the spire as possible," Mirai said. "They will be looking for us. We need to find a place to hide, a neutral world maybe, somewhere the Federation doesn't have much power." Jin listened. He had no answers. His whole life had been planned for him. Now the future was a blank page. It was terrifying and exciting. Later, Mirai found Jin standing in front of the large window in the main cabin. They were traveling through a nebula, a vast cloud of gas and dust that glowed with soft pinks and purples. The light played across his face. He was not moving. He was just watching. "It's beautiful," Mirai said, standing beside him. Jin nodded slowly. On the spire, the stars were just points of light. Navigation points. I did not know they could be like this. He turned to her. "What is this feeling?" "It is large. It sits here." He pointed to his chest. Mirai smiled softly. "I think that's wonder, Jin. Or maybe peace." "Peace," Jin repeated, testing the word. He liked the sound of it. Back on the Aegis spire, Day stood before the overseers. Their holographic forms flickered in the dark room, tall and alien and impossible to read. Day expected to be punished. He expected to be arrested. He had failed in the most spectacular way. He finished his report. "The clone, Unit 7, has escaped with the help of 2 traitors. They took a scout ship. We are tracking them, but they have a significant head start." He waited for their anger. One of the overseers, a being that looked like a tall, slender tree made of light, spoke. Its voice was like wind through leaves. The data from Unit 7's final actions is illuminating. Day blinked. Illuminating? He disobeyed a direct order. He fled. You sought to remove unpredictability, the overseer continued. You saw his development of a conscience as a flaw. We see it differently. Another overseer, a shifting cloud of dark mist, spoke with a voice like stones grinding. A perfect weapon can be studied. It can be countered. It can be predicted. We have many perfect weapons, the first overseer spoke again. But a soldier who can choose, a soldier who can look at a mission and decide it is wrong, that is a new thing. That is an opponent we do not understand. That makes him and the species he comes from far more dangerous than we imagined. Day was confused. So the project was a success? The project to create a blind tool was a failure, the cloud being stated. But the project to understand humanity has just begun. Do not find them, Project Head Day. Let them run. Let them live. Watch them. We wish to see what a free human will become. The holograms faded away, leaving Day alone in the dark. He was not being punished. The project was not over. It was changing. He did not know if he was relieved or more afraid than before. Weeks turned into months aboard the Star Dancer. They found a quiet, out-of-the-way planet. It was not a paradise. It was a rocky world with a thin atmosphere. But it was theirs. They found a small, abandoned mining outpost and made it their home. Jin learned new things. He learned how to fix a broken water filter from Hana. He learned how to check the soil for toxins from Mirai. He learned that his hands, made for fighting, were also good for building and repairing. One day, he was outside the outpost. The sky was a deep purple. The air was cold. In his hand, he held the small brown apple seeds he had saved from the spire. He had found a small patch of soil that Mirai said was clean. He knelt down. He used a tool to make a small hole. He placed the seeds inside and carefully covered them with dirt. He did not know if they would grow. It was a hope, an act of faith. That night they sat around a small heater. Hana was telling a funny story about something that had happened on the spire. Mirai was laughing. Jin watched them. He felt the quiet feeling in his chest again. The peace. He was not a soldier anymore. He was a farmer, a mechanic, a friend. He was Jin. He looked out the window of the outpost at the strange purple sky. He thought about the spire so far away. They had tried to clone a perfect soldier. They had given him strength and speed and intelligence. But the one thing they could not control, the one thing that made him human, was the thing they had not designed: his heart, his ability to choose, and he had chosen this. A simple life. A hard life, but it was his. The universe was vast and full of danger. But here in this small, warm room, with the seeds sleeping in the ground outside, Jin was finally home. He was not a prototype. He was a person, and his story was just beginning.